Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to a video and a bit. I thought I'd kick this one off with a little look at the World of Tanks Halloween mode, because honestly it's not really deserving of a whole video all by itself. Some excellent driving from me there. So basically you have an MT-25, you drive around the Nabelberg map, which I've got to give credit where it's due, does look pretty good with its spooky atmospheric fog and the mysterious tank wrecks around the place. And you collect the green blobs, you bring them back to the central thing, and that's pretty much it. There are some other random boosters around the place, and you can get more of the green blobs from actually killing the undead tanks, I guess they're supposed to be, zombie tanks. But the entire mode seems to exist just so that you can grind out some boosted XP for your regular tanks playing. It isn't really that fun in of itself. It's not like what we've got with World of Warships, where in fact it's building on previous year's Halloween modes, and it is, you know, it's an operation with rewards, but it's also a genuine challenge in its own right as well. This isn't really a challenge. I mean, you're going to do better if you can get some teamwork going, if you've got one person collecting the blobs and other people guarding that person, but even without that, you know, you can still get 200-ish a round. I think I had some bad rounds where we didn't really manage that, and I don't think we really managed that in this round either, because if you die, all of the green stuff you've collected just goes with you and it doesn't respawn on the map or anything. So it's quite straightforward, and the rewards aren't even really for playing the mode itself. It's basically towards, you know, your regular World of Tanks play, which is fine. You can get a nice XP and whatever boost to go with it. There is, I mean, that's a slight lie. There is one reward. There are some Halloween camos that you can get as a result of playing through this enough. I think if you get to the max rank, and you can also just pay some gold and do it that way if you are short on time or just really lazy. But yeah, it's almost a disappointment compared to last year's mode, which had a little bit more story to it, and this is just a kind of standalone, somewhat low effort offering, especially compared to, as I say, what we have in World of Warships. On to the meat of this particular video though. The KV-5, this is one of those rare forays into World of Tanks that I have, and as a lot of the limited matchmaking premiums were buffed in patch 1.2, I thought I would give one or two of them a go, and I say one or two of them, I think it really just has been the KV-5 that I've tried so far. But for a lot of them, well, the buffs are quite welcome, because they've been power crept? Which one would it be? I don't know. Either way, it's happened to them quite badly, and a lot of them were in need of some love. But the thing that prompted it, of course, was Wargaming wanting to ditch limited matchmaking on these vehicles entirely, which was going to necessitate rebalancing. Credit where it's due, Wargaming actually listened to the community being incredibly unhappy with the idea of dropping limited matchmaking for these tanks, because for a lot of people that's why they bought them in the first place. But they still followed through with a bit of rebalancing, and it's not been anything earth-shaking for most of them, but it is certainly welcome. The KV-5 in particular now has more pen. It's got 186. I think that's quite a common number for a lot of them actually. They do now tend to have 186 pen for the 175 pen guns previously, so not a huge amount extra, but a bit extra. Some of them also had things like buffed accuracy, aim time. That's definitely true for the KV-5. It didn't have anything done to its premium ammo, I don't think, but some of them did, and its armor changed a little bit as well. Things like the R2-D2 is now tougher than it was before. It gained about 40mm of armor. It's, what, 160 now? So it's still easily pennable by a lot of the things you meet. It's just a little bit more armored than it was before. You can totally tell how rusty I am at this, by the way. My shooting for most of this is absolutely atrocious. I'm going to end up with a somewhat decent result, but there's more than a little bit of good teamwork going on this flank as well. I wouldn't have been able to do this on my own, certainly not without the 705 doing their part, and the IS-3 and the E-50 as well were doing okay also. In fact, this wasn't really a super close game or anything. I felt it was a nice bit of teamwork, and it was me having a not terrible result in World of Tanks. Now there is enemy artillery to be cognizant of, so once we start pushing around we're going to be subject to that, but quite apart from anything else, that is also a considerable array of enemy guns that are in play on the other side. At the moment I'm trying to somewhat awkwardly put myself in a side-scraping position because the sidearm on this is still very, very good. And I'm also trying to go for the commander's hatches on the WZ and that IS-6 respectively, but it's not the easiest shot, and this is still not a super accurate gun. I am going to waste a lot of shells in this one, but fortunately the KV-5 does carry a fair few. I am landing some of these hits though, it's not completely terrible, it's just, yeah, my shooting definitely leaves something to be desired. So IS-3 is taking a thorough battering, but we're also shaving away the health of some of these tanks quite nicely. The 705 isn't being shy, which is great. They're also not just charging in gung-ho and suiciding into the enemy team, which is also great. Sometimes you'll get players that just have a sudden bout of fatal overconfidence, and then it all goes terribly wrong. But there was a slightly weird occurrence in that, yeah, we've got tanks through to our base already. We just lost artillery to an S1. So we left a bit of a gap in our lines, apparently, which they were able to easily exploit. But I wasn't so much paying attention to that at this moment. I was trying to put on a bit of pressure here, because I'm the only one with any real hit points left. So that WZ's a nice, easy one-shot kill. Well, easy if I can land the hit, of course. And it occurred to me around about now that actually there's this rock right here that I could probably use to my benefit, given how many tanks there are, and especially the fact that I am now going to be in the sights of artillery. The PTA especially, that could have more than enough pen to punch through my armour if they're aiming for the right spots. So the WZ's taken out, we're basically just forcing them back at this point, and it's not just me moving up, you know, I'm providing some cover for my allies to move up as well. It's part of the reason why I showed this replay. I felt like I was doing at least something right. I was using my armour and my hit points appropriately. I could have maybe even played a bit more aggressively in places, I don't know. This just felt like an okay game, considering that I don't play this game very much anymore, as I am quite rusty. So there's artillery, and the PTA, well, they've damaged me some, but I had more hit points to begin with, and no difficulty in penning their armour. So with the DPM, because the DPM on the KV-5 I don't think has been changed, it's still good for a tier 8 heavy tank. It's what, 2100 base DPM, something like that. So in a DPM fight, you know, you're going to come out of it quite well, unless you're fighting a tortoise or something of that nature. So I was a bit more confident facing off against that PTA, although maybe I should have gone forward instead of backwards. You know, it worked out, I got him to peek out, but maybe I could have just charged that rock instead, although I might have taken some more damage in the side from that lever in the process if I had. But I could afford to take a hit or two at this point. And really, this is just distraction now. I'm not even trying to especially do damage. I'm just trying to keep the attention of the lurver, because I can see on the minimap there's a whole bunch of tanks coming up behind them. If this gun's pointed this way, then it's not pointed at them. And it's also all, of course, extra bounced damage. So this is pretty much over. The 25 AP is utterly surrounded, and it looks like the T10 is going to take care of that enemy last tank destroyer as well. So we've won, and it was a pretty comfortable victory all in all, but I felt like I helped contribute to it. I wasn't exactly the driving force on this flank, but I certainly tried to use my hit points and my armour as appropriate. And the extra penetration certainly doesn't hurt. It really doesn't. The spots I was aiming at, the enemies I was tackling, I probably still would have had pretty much the same result with the old amount of pen, but there are certainly going to be circumstances where that extra penetration does come in useful. But there are other vehicles where it'll be even more useful. The Super Pershing got a very nice penetration buff. That got like an extra 10mm of average pen. And I think the Jagdtiger 8.8 is now up to 212mm of average pen as well. So I'm definitely going to have to give those a go at some point. So that was a pretty good round. 2300 damage is not terrible. 2700 bounced damage is not terrible, and I picked up nearly 1300 spotting and assistance. So all in all, yeah, it was a decent round, and it also turned out to be quite a profitable round as well. So with all these buffs, yeah, I'm going to have to give some of the other limited matchmaking prems a go. I've got an excuse to play a bit of World of Tanks now, but I might not be rushing to put out any videos on them anytime soon, because there's a whole bunch of warship stuff coming up. We've already had the first part of Warships Halloween, the preliminary events, and then the pièce de résistance, the submarines, that's due in, gosh, like a day from now as I'm recording? Or is it 2 days, I think? I can't remember. They've gated them by date, so you've got to play through the first bits first, and then we get to have the subs and try out the new stuff. Anyway, it's all rather more involved, and it's had rather more effort put into it than the World of Tanks Halloween stuff. So hopefully you found this video interesting, and if you did, you can do all the usual things down underneath it, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.